Well, guys, sound the purge sirens. Microsoft is at it again this year. Let's take a look. So Microsoft is letting go its largest layoff in years as it hits Xbox this time, sales, and some other divisions. Let's take a look. Microsoft says it's laying off about 9,000 workers. Its second mass layoff in months and its largest in more than 2 years. Now, where does this 9,000 worker figure come from? Well, they don't ever tell you the amount of people they're going to let go. They just let you know a percentage because that's what matters to shareholders. And they said it was about 4% of the workforce that they had last year. Well, if we look at their employment numbers from last year, because this is public data, they had 228,000 full-time workers as of June 2024. So if you take away 4%, you're somewhere in that range of 9,000 people, right? That's what this paragraph here is explaining. So that's where we're getting 9,000. Now, this all started on Wednesday. So yesterday, Xbox started getting notifications. A lot of the people in that division were starting to find out their job was no longer in place. And of those 9,000, just shy of 1,000 were tied to their Microsoft headquarters in Redmond. So these are the suits. These are the ones we're not really worried about today. Still sucks for them, but we're looking at the gaming division specifically. Phil Spencer, the Xbox CEO, said on Wednesday that the cuts would position the video game business for enduring success and allow us to focus on strategic growth areas. So basically what they're saying is we're letting off a lot of people who are involved in projects that we as a company no longer want to work towards. One of the prime examples being Perfect Dark. We know that that team is basically gone and that game is no longer going to happen. So the Perfect Dark remake is canceled. So that's not a direction they want to go. That's not a strategic growth area, and they're gone. It's difficult to say what Xbox is planning because, the Xbox Series X and Series S were unfortunately failures when you compare them to the other consoles on the market, right? The PlayStation 5, like the beast I have right here, sold almost 2-to-1 to Xbox's consoles in this last generation, and they kind of just crapped all over Xbox, which, it is what it is. That's just the way it goes. But it's kind of curious to see if Xbox is going to stay in the console market or not. There have been rumors that they're going to be pulling out of the console market and focusing more on licensing, software distribution and stuff like that, which I think is honestly a great idea, right? Xbox is starting to allow PlayStation to have some of its exclusives. So why not just focus on acquiring the companies that make the games that people love and then just allowing them to be played on a PlayStation? You get your sales for the game software, they get the sales from the consoles. It's a win-win. Now, obviously, there's always going to be competition, and competition is necessary to breed a good capitalistic system. So is it going to be kind of unfortunate if Xbox leaves the gaming sphere, or leaves the console market? Absolutely, right? You look at something like Nintendo, who's already pushing the bounds on what people will accept when it comes to costs of games, costs of consoles with the Switch 2. And now we don't really have, or may not have, and we still don't know if this is for sure, but we may not have that checks and balance that comes from its competitors, right? Imagine not that long ago, I can't remember if it was the Xbox One, PS4, right? The Xbox One came out and they're like, it's $500. And Sony came out and they just said, $399. $100 cheaper, and they just won E3 or whatever the heck happened. You guys know what story I'm talking about. So it's kind of difficult to see what Xbox plans to do next, right? They kind of unfortunately keep shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to consoles. You had the whole DRM debacle with the Xbox One. You had, the cost of the Xbox One. And that's why I was saying them leaving the console market, as much as some people are going to say, yeah, who cares? It still does affect us as gamers because you can't have another company come out and say, yeah, we'll just have one cheaper so you can buy that instead, because now you're only going to have the 1 or 2 options instead of having the 3. So now you don't have a choice. And that's really why, that's why competition is so important in a market like this. The Xbox team also said that they would, quote, follow Microsoft's lead in removing layers of management to increase agility and effectiveness. This makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, right, if you have let's say a concept idea for a character and you have to take it to Jim has to take it to Tim has to go to Jeremy, who has to go to Sharon, who has to go to Phyllis, who has to go to Karen, who has to go to Joe, who then has to go to, Rob. And at the end of the day, it took 2 weeks to get that done because maybe Rob was out of the office, maybe Karen had a meeting, whatever the case may be. By removing all those obstacles and just saying, instead of going from Jim to Tim to Jeremy, etc., to just go from user to manager, and that's the end of it, that makes a lot of sense, right? You look at something like what Elon, love him or hate him, did with Twitter, right? He goes in and he guts 80% of the workforce. And at the end of the day, did you as the end user notice any difference? No, you saw some people upset that they lost their job, obviously, because that sucks. But as the user, you felt no change. The only change you had was that they changed the name to X, which is stupid. I still hate that name. But I still use Twitter, right? I made a Twitter account for this channel when I started it because I thought it would be kind of fun to talk to people about gaming on Twitter. But as the user, I felt no change. So I have a feeling that this isn't going to be the first company, right? Or excuse me, that wasn't going to be the first company that's going to do it and be the only company to do it, right? Twitter is a huge company making so much money off advertisements and obviously memberships. So obviously other companies are going to follow suit and do the same thing. And it looks like Xbox is now starting to pull that plug. Until now, this year's biggest layoff was in May when they cut about 3% of their global workforce. And the cutbacks come as Microsoft continues to invest huge amounts of money in data centers, specialized computer chips, and other infrastructures that are needed to advance AI ambitions. The company anticipated that these expenses would cost about $80 billion in the last fiscal year, and its fiscal year began Tuesday. So this is very common, right? The fiscal year for companies always starts at some arbitrary time. For example, my company, I got laid off. Their fiscal year starts in May. I got laid off in the middle of May, and they're just trying to save their buck. Now, obviously the situation is a little different for me. I was working in a technical support team for a medical device company who assists with medical technical support for American customers, and they gave my job to the Philippines. I don't really want to get into it here, but I just think it's so stupid that an American company who assists American customers can give my job to another country. That is what it is. Corporate America will corporate America, and maybe one day they'll protect, they'll do better at protecting Americans at our jobs. But hey, it is what it is. I feel like the guys in South Park, they took my job. Well, they sure as hell did, and now I'm unemployed. But anyways, let's get back to topic. Microsoft just last month cut another 300 workers based out of Redmond's headquarters, and on top of nearly 2,000 who lost their job in the Puget Sound region in May, most of them in software engineering and product management roles. So again, you're looking at these people who are being replaced either by AI or by kind of rooting out a lot of just excess, right? Those being taken out of product management roles are being removed because you don't need a Jim, a Tim, a Terry, a Jeremy, a Sharon, a Phyllis, etc. And then the software engineers are being replaced by the AI systems that Microsoft is investing in. And I'm going to kind of just go on a little tangent here, but this really just sucks. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm getting all these wild for. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan, I apologize. There's nothing I can do about this. Basically, what's happening is you have all these people who came out of college who went to, a 4-year, 6-year school to learn coding, get their degree in coding, and now they're being told, hey, sorry, your job is replaced by AI. You're an irrelevant piece to the puzzle of corporate America now. And that's just the nature of how things go when it comes to the progression of the workplace, right? Look at, the late 1800s with the Industrial Revolution. You had all of these people who lost their jobs in factories because you didn't need the guy to put the cylindrical piece on the dowel anymore because the machine would do it for you. Well, now you have to go back to school to learn how to be the one who fixes the machine, who can put the cylindrical piece on the dowel. And that's kind of what's happening now. All these people who came out of school to learn coding and to be engineers are being told, sorry, AI is replacing you. And I can see why, right? An engineer coming out of school who's getting a starter job, they make a really large amount of money, which is great for them, right? It's a tough job. It requires a lot of skills. It requires a lot of school. It requires a lot of know-how. But at the end of the day, you are an expensive commodity to that company. And if they can replace you by getting an AI to do that job, you better bet your ass they're gonna do it. And that's what's happening all over the industry right now. Even at the company that I worked at, a lot of the engineers for the medical device were replaced by AI. And that's just that's just the way it's got to be, unfortunately. For me, I went to school, mid to early 2000s. Coding wasn't really even a thing back then as a curriculum. You didn't go to college to learn coding back then. You learned, the basics. You learned English, math, stuff like that. It wasn't really until maybe late 2010s, mid 2010s that coding as a curriculum became really important and really big. So for me, I'm kind of past this point. I could go learn on an online course. I think that's like a year and a half online course to learn coding. But at this point, what's the point if my job's going to be replaced by AI? Who knows, right? Like, we're in a very murky mode right now when it comes to what we can and should do with our time in terms of this engineering market. The Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella, said earlier this year that maybe 20 to 30% of code for some of Microsoft's coding projects are all written by software. So 30% of all these engineers is being replaced by AI. They're focused more and more on AI, cloud, and next generation Microsoft, and really looking to cut costs around Xbox and these legacy areas. So it really looks like Microsoft as a whole is trying to slide Xbox slowly out the back door, maybe put them in the shed in the back and say, look, you can still be there, you can still work there, but you're not as important anymore to our business and to our overall profits as we initially had planned. And maybe over time, they're going to kind of maybe split them off, right? I would be interested to see if Xbox ever did split off from Microsoft. I don't think that they would do that because Microsoft is still going to make them a lot of money, right? In this little section here, it even talks about that this is the same company that owns Candy Crush and Call of Duty. So obviously they're making a lot of money from there. Now, is it as much as their AI business? Obviously not, but it's still going to be a chunk of change at the end of the day, right? You have to keep in mind the gaming market makes more than Hollywood and the music industry combined. So there's still money to be had in gaming, but it looks like Microsoft may not really know what it wants Xbox to do to be that horse of cash that they're looking for. But yeah, they got Activision Blizzard. And that was in 2023. We're going to keep our comments on that one quiet because, with Blizzard, I haven't seen anything from Blizzard lately that I could care about. And Activision, all they care about is Call of Duty and, like they say, Candy Crush. These companies right here as a whole are two that I just don't care about anymore. And I used to love, World of Warcraft, Overwatch and stuff like that. But anyways, moving on. Then before that, they had just acquired ZeniMax, which was Bethesda, and then you saw how great Starfield did. And where the hell is Elder Scrolls 6, right? So I don't know. It's kind of crazy. Like I said, for those of us, TLDR, 9,000 people at Xbox and Microsoft are getting let go. Not everybody is in the gaming division. A lot of it is because of AI. Perfect Dark is basically canceled. And that's the state of gaming today. Unfortunately, this is something that we're always going to see happening around the business and corporate world. This is just normal. It's sad that this is normal. This is 9,000 people whose lives are drastically about to change. I would know. I'm one of them. I didn't work for Microsoft, but I got let go about a month and a half ago. And starting July 15th, I will be literally let go. I'm kind of on like a 2-month hiatus right now while I wait for them to finalize paperwork. But on July 15th, I will technically have lost my job and go on unemployment. And it's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy that this is the world we live in where, you can take 9,000 people and just dump them off and say, good luck to you. And that's just something we as a society really just look at and go, I guess that's okay. That's how it works. That's business. But, hey, we're going to keep those opinions to ourselves because we're here to have a good time, talk about gaming and how this affects us. As Switch players, this doesn't affect us at all because this is at Xbox, but as video game players and people who do empathize with video game industry, we can kind of see, this is unfortunate. Hey, maybe some of these developers will go to Nintendo and help them work on their games. It's unlikely, right? Western development and Eastern development is so different right now, especially when you look at the types of games that they're making. But, I wish them all the best. I hope they all can find new jobs. I hope that, these theories on what AI is replacing are, not 100% true and that you can find something. It just sucks, man. This just sucks. But yeah, tell me what you guys think down below. What are your thoughts on all this? Have you been let go from a job? Do you empathize with what's going on here? Can you feel this, the pain that these people are probably going through, finding out on a Wednesday, hey, go home, you have no job now? What are your guys' thoughts? Comment down below, like and subscribe. As always, have a great day.